What's Making Headlines? Your weekly wrap-up of the biggest news stories in the Australian mortgage and finance broker market.
Hello and welcome back to What's Making Headlines. It's Charlie and Annie with you here today, unpacking what we've been writing about, what we've been seeing, who we've been talking to this week. How's your week been, Charlie?
It's been good. A mix of things this week. We've had inflation kind of updates and comments from RBA Governor Michelle Bullock and a range of other things as well. A lot of broker-related stories this week. So, yeah.
It's been a weird week, hasn't it? Because obviously over the weekend, the Middle Eastern conflict broke out.
Yep.
So there's been a lot of I think on Monday, there was a lot of real kind of overview of what's happening, how does that impact over here. It's taken a few days to actually settle. Now we're 6 days into the conflict, and it seems to have escalated quite a lot.
Yeah, for
Lots
sure.
of concerns now around oil inflation. So we'll talk about that in just a bit.
For sure.
But I think firstly, let's start with some good news, because I didn't want to start off with the depressing news. So some good news.
Yep.
And we did have some new figures from the Mortgage and Finance Association of Australia this week
Yeah,
around broker market share, which
did.
again, pretty promising stuff. What did it tell us?
Positive news, very much a good news story for all the brokers out there. And basically what we've got from this quarterly market share is that broker use is maintaining at, pretty significant highs. So 76% share was 0.6% points lower than September 2024 of 77.3. So, but still very high. It's a record December
December
result.
I think you really buried the lead there.
I know.
You were it's dropped.
That was the headline. Record December high of 76.7%, and it's only dipped 0.5% from the previous quarter. So it's remaining stable.
And was the previous quarter a record, or was it just a record for the September quarter? I can't remember.
I believe...
Because I think 78.6 was the previous record, maybe?
Yeah, I think you're right. So, yeah, you are right. As I said, was 0.7 percentage points higher than the December 24 quarter and 4.9% points above December 2023, but was 0.6% point lower than September 25, which was that all-time high of 77.3%.
But it's still over 3/4 of people using a mortgage broker, which is pretty exciting.
Use is way up.
Yeah. So we know that obviously lending has been a massive increasing sort of area the last 24 months, really. And even with the February cash rate decision going up, cash rate going up, still seeing a lot of demand in market at the moment. All the brokers we've been talking to been super busy trying to get people, whether it's refinanced or investor lending or SMSF lending. There's so much activity on the market, and of course,
and even
buyers.
spread across all the cities
all
as
states,
well, really.
So I think great to see that for the December quarter as well, which typically, as we come into summer, we see a lot of activity. That's the busiest time of year, really, for property, the spring selling season. So generally, we normally see quite a high level of activity. So great to see that more than 3/4 of borrowers still using brokers.
And dollar terms as well is $142 billion in new home loans. So 9.2% increase on the previous quarter.
Is that a record? That sounds high.
I'm not too sure, but activity is swelling both in, use and dollar terms.
It is apparently the largest amount for a December period. I wonder what the last record was. But yes, that's interesting. So
still high nonetheless.
High. A record December high for volume and percentage is basically what we're saying here. So really exciting news. And I think the other thing that you reported on this week, which I thought was really interesting and related to this, is some data coming from the Finance Brokers Association of Australia, looking at why borrowers are using brokers, because obviously we know they are, according to the MFAA. So what's drawing them to brokers?
Yeah, so this was really interesting from the FBAA. It was pretty comprehensive as well. It spoke about, as you said, why clients and borrowers are approaching brokers, but also how they rate their experience and engagement, and what type of engagement forms they prefer, whether it be face-to-face or how referrals are coming as well. So what we got from this, what the overarching theme was, borrowers are really looking for experience and knowledge of the market. They want someone who is wise, who has fundamental knowledge, and can make recommendations to them that will benefit them. They're looking for someone who is really well-oiled, well experienced and has their best interest at heart. So, as I said, experience and knowledge of the market as a key kind of benefit of using a broker or a borrower that used a broker over the last 3 years. That as a factor rose from 50 to 53%, and that's combined finance and mortgage brokers as well. And then convenience and savings also was up from 38 to 43% year on year. So this is year on year.
Yep.
So that was 2025 compared with the year previous. So people are also doing it for convenience.
Yeah, and I think
well.
that makes sense. I mean, like at the end of the day, especially if you're a first-time buyer or you're an investor with multiple properties, you're a bit like, cannot understand this paperwork. There's too many forms to fill.
Yeah.
There's too many questions being asked. I don't know some of the terminology. You know, like you ask a sort of person who's buying a house for the first time what their assets and liabilities are, and they'd be like, I don't know, I spend too much. I don't know, what do I need to put in here? So I think like having that convenience factor, and as you said there, the knowledge factor, really important and like a great calling card for brokers, the reason why people use brokers. I think also the best interest duty is quite interesting, like seeing what borrowers think about the fact they're going to a broker channel because of they know they want to act in their best interest, or they're going to act in their best interest, whereas obviously the proprietary channel doesn't have that. And it's quite a sizable sample size, like 1,000 people that responded to this FBAA survey.
It was over 1,000. It was 1,007.
1,007.
So just
there we go.
And it was a pretty broad sample size too of investors and homeowners as well.
Yeah,
so
first-time buyers. So like asking them not only why they chose a broker, what they value about the broker, but also the types of things they're going to a broker for.
Yeah.
One of the things I did think was weird though in that report was that it was saying people were increasingly going to brokers for cryptocurrency loans.
Yeah, I did see that. I mean, the
and
SMSF category is up.
Yeah.
And that's something we've been writing about for, since I've been here at the Advisor since January.
Yeah.
It's a pretty consistent trend. But yeah, the crypto thing was a bit bizarre.
Like, they can't talk about cryptocurrency. It's a wealth product. And they can't give them investment advice.
It was a pretty substantial part of the survey as well.
I think people were misunderstanding perhaps what kind of broker they were talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought they were a crypto broker.
Maybe.
But yeah, I was like, why is there such a high proportion of people talking to mortgage and finance brokers about crypto? And we don't even have crypto loans here. I think the only person that offers crypto loans in Australia is... Oh, it slipped my mind.
Well,
there was one. I remember writing a news story about it,
okay.
I think last year or maybe 2 years ago.
You'd know a lot more than me about that.
You know what? I'm going to look it up because it's going to drive me crazy.
Oh, man. But yeah, I think we should also...
Block earner. There we go.
What was that?
Block earner.
Block earner. Okay.
Yeah.
And satisfaction is up too. And it's remaining stable. People are satisfied with the level of, care that they're getting from brokers, and the communication category is up for finance and mortgage brokers as well. So
yeah.
I think that's important to kind of profile.
And I think this has been something that we've been seeing a lot, is obviously as competition gets more fierce, as we said, more than 3/4 of people are using a broker now. So
yep.
brokers really having to compete to stand out from the crowd, to
yep.
be the broker that people choose.
Yep.
And I think this is, again, like seeing people putting a lot more effort and time in their marketing and their LinkedIn presence, in their social media presences, because they're like, we need people to find us. We need people to know that we're the broker they should be using.
Absolutely.
And this is a big core piece of focus that we're going to be doing at Better Business Summit this year, which starts next week.
I know.
Which we're super excited about.
Crept up on us.
Yeah. So Better Business starts in Queensland, in Brisbane next week. And a lot of our focus is around, well, how do you scale a brokerage? So we've got people who are really like operational leaders from much larger businesses being like, how do you run a very kind of smooth, efficient operation that
yep.
really is successful?
Yep.
So we've got Drew Arthurson from the Sydney Swans talking. They actually had their first game yesterday. They won, if you're interested, playing Carlton.
Nice.
So we've got Drew Arthurson, who's the Chief Operations Officer of Sydney Swans, talking about how they run the team and like what they do to kind of ensure they're performing at the top level they can. We've got Maxine Horn, who you spoke to recently for a story on The Advisor.
Yeah, very knowledgeable.
Yeah, she's
someone...
CEO. She was at one point the highest paid CEO, female
CEO in Australia. And a great entrepreneur that took a single phone telecommunication shop on the Gold Coast and just scaled it massively into an ASX listed company, Vita. And she was great to speak to, so knowledgeable. She's got such great tips longevity and success and that kind of thing. So she should be a great one to kind of look forward to.
Yeah, she's doing one of our keynotes as well. So, she's doing a keynote across the country. But yeah, really fascinating to see all this business advice from people like that, but then also from people who are doing it themselves. So we're going to hear from Darren Little from Smart Move, which is a brokerage here in Sydney, a top 25 brokerage, about how they've scaled, what they do, what that process looks like. And every single session this year for Better Business has got like a sort of practical element, but also a tactical element. Like, how do you do it? What's the theory behind doing it? How do you actually do it? And then, of course, we've got loads of people talking about, AI and technology and marketing, sort of digital, the new wave of marketing, how you should be doing it now to stand out with large language models. Got Russ Easter from Digital Brief talking, and Adam Franklin as well speaking. And we've been talking to these speakers as we approach Better Business, really kind of filling in like what we're seeing in the broker channel, what we want them to be covering, but also hearing from them all of their experience and being like, what are you going to be telling us? And, writing news stories off the back of them, because there's some really amazing sort of insights here, particularly with AI around what you can be doing with it.
That was a great story.
And also what you should be potentially mindful against as well. So if you do want to come along to the Better Business Summit, do make sure you buy your tickets, because we start next week in the Sofitel Brisbane on the 12th of March, and it's pretty much every Thursday after that. So it's the 19th of March then in Adelaide, the 26th of March in the Crown Perth. Then we have a break for Easter. Then we come back on the 9th of April in Sydney, and we finish up in Melbourne for the 16th of April. So every Thursday apart from that Middle Easter period. So if you haven't yet bought your tickets to the Better Business Summit, do make sure you do.
Get on those tickets.
Get on the tickets. Get on the Better Business Awards as well.
A great event.
Yeah, it's super exciting. I think actually the Sydney Awards is already sold out, and it's more than a month away. So yeah, thanks everyone for buying tickets. But when we come back, I do want to delve a little bit further into AI in the mortgages space and how brokers are using it, because this has been a big point of focus for one of the big stories we wrote this week. And we'll get into that just after this. So Charlie, this is something we've been talking about quite a lot this week on The Advisor, because on Friday, I think it was last week, the Australian Financial Review broke a news story about CBA having self-reported to the police that they think they had been the victim of about $1 billion worth in mortgage fraud. Now, we've not been able to verify this story with CBA. They obviously don't really want to be talking about it too much. Plus, because it's a police investigation, it's ongoing, they don't want to be commenting on it. So we haven't actually been able to get them to confirm the details of this report. But it looks like from what the AFR is reporting, there's been some pretty good journalism going on here, investigative journalism. And they were talking about the fact that they had seen, supposedly, they've been doing like a deep dive into their loan book and having a look at what the veracity of their loans is on their books. And I think this comes after some other lenders had reported fraud. So they had a little look, and they were had identified something that they think could be fraud. And the details, according to the AFR, seem to be either misconduct by referral channels, also mortgage brokers, they were claiming in a statement to the AFR at least, and then also some concerns around whether people are using AI to doctor documents. So using artificial intelligence to come up with things that look real but actually aren't. And so this obviously has been a big topic of conversation. Now, we wrote a story on The Advisor on Monday with the retaliation from the mortgage broking industry, because some of the comments that CBA gave to the AFR, which they hadn't clarified to us, even though we did ask them, was around where this is coming from. And I'll read the spokesperson comment that the AFR published. And it says, "This is an industry-wide challenge, with fraud being attempted through mortgage broking and referral channels." That was a sentence in its own. And I was like, sorry, are you saying the whole mortgage broking channel is attempting fraud? This isn't clear what you're talking about here. And the Mortgage and Finance Association of Australia CEO, Andy Panic, provided us with a statement basically saying we need them to clarify this. So she said, licensed mortgage brokers are subject to strict regulatory obligations, including the best interest duty, licensing requirements, professional standards, education requirements, and oversight by ASIC and aggregators. Fraud is a serious issue across the entire lending system. Where it is identified, it must be addressed decisively, including examining where controls or checks and balances may have failed and implementing improvements where required. We all agree there. But what she's basically saying is, we need someone to be clear that this isn't like just broking.
No.
Brokers have all of these rules. We need them to identify and clarify that it's not just a risk with the whole broker channel, because we do have all of these things. So she's saying, where is this sort of fraud coming from? Is it other referral or introducer arrangements that are not subject to the same regulatory framework of brokers?
The brokers are, yeah.
Or is it actually brokers?
Yeah.
And I think this is the statement really that we've been focusing in on, being like, are they saying that the whole broker channel is fraudulent?
Yeah.
And that is obviously a major public image crisis for the broking industry.
For sure. And I think is also somewhat contradictory from what we're hearing from the regulators as well. Everything that we've been hearing from ASIC as they're conducting their kind of review
of best interest duty,
the best interest duty, which is obviously ongoing, but they're making pretty significant headway on, is the fact that, ASIC regulators are saying that misconduct is low.
Yeah.
It's very low.
Super low. And we know that from the Australian Financial Complaints Authority as well.
Yep.
Less than 1% of all complaints to the Financial Complaints Authority are about brokers.
Yep.
Really generally quite low levels of misconduct, and particularly when you look against, what ASIC's been doing the last year, so much focus in the super and wealth channels, very little action taken in broking.
Yeah.
Now, as you say, they're doing this review, so maybe that's going to be coming up.
Yep.
We don't know what the future holds.
They haven't, it's sort of any public commentary that ASIC has made over the past month or so has been to kind of temper expectations and say, look, this isn't it's not going to be a sweeping review. It's either going to be, a short form response from us.
Yeah.
It's not going to, we're not going to be making hundreds of recommendations.
Worried.
No.
Yeah. But I mean, as we say, we'll continue to follow this along. And there are, of course, there's always going to be bad apples in every industry. So making sure that they get stamped out, that
Absolutely.
they get held to account if they are doing the wrong thing is super important.
And it has been 5 years since
for the best interest review, yes. But I think that this case, and the reason why we've been looking at it really in focus, is because of this supposed introduction of AI fraud documents, fraudulent documents.
Yep.
And of course, we know nearly all the other majors have had some issue with fraud, or having reported frauds. We know that NAB had that sort of penthouse syndicate team that defrauded them, and I think that police investigation resulted in arrests last year, maybe earlier this year actually. And we have seen the other majors as well say we've got concerns about some of these loans coming through.
Yeah.
The main problem for us is being but don't put blame where you can't back that up. Don't say it's mortgage brokers if it's not.
No, very, very bold claim, and kind of general too. So
because it sort of couples them with introducers as well. And it's well, mortgage brokers are actually licensed, as Annie Panic said
very
there.
Different.
They have these duties, they have controls, they have regulation, they have aggregators and compliance teams around them.
Yeah.
If you're an introducer, that's probably where there may be a little bit more leeway because there's less oversight. So I think that's very important, is that the broking industry was excuse me, please be clearer with your statements.
Absolutely,
because we don't want you tarring the whole industry with this one brush. No. And I think the MFAA as well, when they were talking about this to us about the CBA alleged fraud, they were talking about the fact that saying, really is important it's really important to see that people are using increasingly sophisticated AI to perpetrate fraud, basically, in mortgage applications. And so brokers really need to be hyper-vigilant, making sure that reviewing all the document really carefully. Our sister publication, Broker Daily, this morning actually wrote a story looking at some of the tips and tricks that brokers can do to try and identify fraudulent documents. But of course, it's really hard at the end of the day.
Very much so.
Having to provide documents and you're trusting that the person who's giving them to you is doing it with
and if they look the exact same as any other.
They might look exactly the same. I think a good tip from Brett Spencer at DocuScan was saying sometimes the metadata is off. So if you check the metadata, that's a good way of catching doctored documents. But of course, that's something that not only brokers need to do, but the lenders need to do too. So lots going on here. And I think this is something that we're really focusing on, is looking at, what sort of things are we seeing challenging the broking industry and this potential alleged fraud. I mean, $1 billion in the grand scheme of things isn't massive for CBA.
No, it's not.
But it's not great.
No, it's still relevant, still of note.
And of course, we have had other challenges cropping up this week, as we mentioned. I mean, obviously, the conflict in the Middle East has been causing some ramifications in the financial markets across the globe. People concerned about the cost of oil going up.
Yep.
Obviously, there's more countries kind of coming into Middle Eastern conflict, spreading into Europe as well. So sort of seeing like a lot of challenge going on economically. And Michelle Bullock was this week talking about that, what that impact could be for inflation here in Australia. What did she say? Yeah,
she was speaking at the Australian Financial Review Business Summit on Tuesday, where she made these comments the first time the RBA governor made comments on this ongoing military conflict in the Middle East. And she basically said, look, the conflict could, in theory, prolong high inflation in Australia and contribute directly, to high inflation in Australia. But how would it do that? Well, she basically said that, her quote was, another concern is that the longer inflation stays above target, the greater the risk that people expect inflation to stay high. So that was her talking about expectations. And then she shifted back to the domestic picture and said, these events are a timely reminder that geopolitical uncertainty, things can change quickly. And she basically said that a supply shock could push global oil and energy prices up, which could, quote, add to inflationary pressures and feeding into those expectations that she started on, which was, she basically said that, if people expect inflation to be high, that's not a good thing because it'll become normalized and kind of entrenched in attitude, which she was talking in tandem about expectations, and then she shifted from expectations and went, look, this conflict could contribute to those high expectations about inflation. So higher inflation for longer means potentially more hikes? Yeah, potentially. At the same time, she also spoke on the contrary and said a prolonged impact on energy markets could have adverse effects on global economic activity, result in downturn and downward pressure on inflation, and it is not obvious how this might play out. I guess that's true, because if suddenly, the things that the RBA have been really looking at recently have been obviously GDP and CPI, but also employment. Yeah. And if there is, touch wood, there isn't, but if there is a huge kind of financial impact and people start losing their jobs, then unemployment will obviously go up. And then that might change the RBA's views. Yeah, exactly. Plus, if people aren't spending as much because they're in stress from any kind of financial issue. Yeah, she that might also portrayed it as a double-edged sword of anything could happen. High and CBA was talking about it as well. They did the math and went, well, if crude increases by this much and this is how much oil increased domestically, and I think they said it would put 0.1% an addition, 0.1% addition on underlying inflation. So they've revised their estimates. And I think they were saying that as well. Next week they're going to put out a new statement on forecast, because I think we have the RBA not coming this coming week, but the following week, the 17th of March, making their March decision. And up until now, people have been saying nothing happening in March. No. And now the people are like, well, we may need to look at that. Depending everything's on what flaring up and with the Middle East. So much discussions now about petrol and oil and how that's going to look and how that's going to shift global supply. I actually went and got petrol on Saturday morning when I woke up and read what had been happening overnight. Obviously here in Australia, we were asleep when a lot of the conflict started. Absolutely. So I sort of woke up and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go fill my car up with petrol. What a decision. Being a cynic. I think a lot of other people have the same idea. And the queue at the time was okay, but by the time that I left, there was like 5 cars waiting. So I was like, obviously I'm not the only person thinking this. And now, petrol has shot up quite a bit here. The other things that have been challenging the mortgage markets have been still this ongoing pressure in overseas private credit markets. And over the weekend, a UK lender called Market Financial Solutions, MFS, collapsed, went into administration. Wow. And this, while it isn't a giant lender, and most people probably hadn't really heard of them, I think they basically said that they had about $1.1 billion in loans backed by only $230 million. Sorry, not dollars, pounds, because it's the UK. 1.1 billion pounds in loans were reportedly only backed by £230 million in actual assets. And so they've been cross-collateralizing loans and telling their backers that they were backing asset-backed loans when they actually
were double backed, if you see what I mean. So they collapsed. And then that sort of had like a ramification on other lenders. So there was quite major lenders that had given this lender money, including Barclays, Jefferies, and Santander.
Wow.
They were allegedly at risk of substantial potential losses. According to the Times over in the UK, Barclays had about £600 million of exposure, which is over $1 billion, while Jefferies had over £100 million. So these lenders are open potentially to quite large losses, although that hasn't really filtered out yet.
Yep.
But then we have seen also some lenders here in Australia say that they were exposed as well. So all of them now having to have a look at, talk to the administrators and be like, can we get our money back? What is happening with these loans?
Yeah.
And obviously that is, again, putting the focus on private credit and being like, how much transparency is there in the private credit space?
Yep.
You know, people again talking about, should there be much more reporting involved? Should it be clearer what's happening when you come to these private lenders? Because increasingly we've had failures in market, and that obviously puts a lot of pressure on the whole system.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's really valid as well, seeing as though how kind of interconnected everything is and commingled, and you know, lenders are lending to other lenders as well.
I mean, of course they're allowed to do that. Yeah.
No. I'm not saying they're not. It's more just a fact of everyone's implicated.
Yeah.
Really.
I'm going to just also read out some comments from one of the economists at National Australia Bank at NAB who was talking about this, and he said, this is Taylor Nugent, saying, I suppose the process now is unpicking those interlinkages and where those exposures are, but it certainly hasn't done anything to improve confidence there. And you've seen that in the US as well. Banks and consumer lenders especially were down on Friday. And I think that just speaks to some of these concerns that maybe there is more of these sorts of issues lurking in that lending space. Now, of course, private credit has been ongoing through reviews here in Australia. Last year, we had ASIC release some new guides to the private credit market saying this is what we expect of you. APRA as well had been taking some look at the private lending market and making sure it's transparent, particularly when it comes to things like super fund lending. And also super funds lending. So I think like seeing that sort of space really come into focus recently. So hopefully we won't see too much contagion here, but definitely just put some added pressure on how much are we seeing, how many guardrails should we be putting in place in the private lending space here in Australia?
Yeah, definitely something to think about moving forwards.
That middle section, really a lot of challenges going on in the market, like fraud,
but a lot of it is out of our control,
collapses.
I think. Yeah.
All of it's out of our control, but I think it's always so, you know, it's so interesting to see how everything connects in the mortgage market across the globe, not just here in Australia.
Very interesting.
We're going to take a quick break here. We're on to cheerier things, including International Women's Day, which takes place this weekend, and we'll get into that just after this. So on Sunday, it is International Women's Day, which, did you know this, Charlie, has been running for over a century.
I didn't know that. I found that out in the story that you wrote yesterday.
I thought it was interesting.
Thank
Popped
you for
it
the
in
fun
there.
fact.
Yeah. But yeah, so International Women's Day started in 1911, apparently.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been going a long time, and obviously across the globe it's celebrated. This year it will be taking place on the 8th of March, which is Sunday. And the theme this year is around give to gain. So it's calling on businesses to think about what they're giving in order to gain gender equality.
Yep.
Whether that's obviously charitably or more in terms of just what they're actually putting out there, what they're providing in terms of support. And we always, at The Advisor here and our work with Women in Finance, one of our sub-brands, always looking at, well, what can we be doing to encourage more women into the broking industry, to encourage more women into financial services, and to keep them in this industry too? Because we know that less than, I think it's about 28% of all brokers are women. So still very much the minority.
Yeah.
And a lot of the issue we seem to be having, according to data from the FAA and the MFAA, is that we do encourage women into the industry, but they seem to leave quite quickly. Now, it's not clear why. It might be that there's, you know, it's harder than they thought it was going to be. It might be that they just have other commitments that they actually mean they can't do it. It might be that their circumstances have changed. Or what a lot of concern is it the industry itself turning people off? And, you know, is there something we can be doing here to fix the industry?
Yeah.
But we talked to a lot of brokers here on The Advisor, obviously, for all of our podcasts. And I talked to a few for International Women's Day this week, and was a bit like, do you think this is a good profession? We actually wrote this story on our sister title, Broker Daily, saying, you know, what women think about being female brokers, what they like about it, what they think could be improved. And they're all like, this is fantastic. You get to work flexibly. There's no gender pay gap. You know, you can make it your own. But of course, it is hard work. The main thing they seem to be sort of saying, though, could be done to improve the industry is to amplify more success stories, bring more women together, help encourage more women to support one another, which is, of course, what we do here at The Advisor too.
Absolutely.
And this week, on Friday to this morning, actually, we released the Women in Finance Elite Broker Ranking for the first time ever. And this was partly because last year, when we did our Elite Broker Ranking, we had a woman top the ranking for the first time. And while we were looking through all of the submissions and the rankings that had come through, we noticed that actually quite a lot of people were women. So probably reflective of the industry, it was around about just under a third who'd applied for the Elite Broker Ranking came in who are women. So we were like, well, let's do a separate ranking. And our partners, Renown Lending, which is a non-bank lender, had been doing a lot of work in this space. And they're like, we'd love to partner with you and showcase and amplify who's doing amazing stuff. So we released this morning the first ever Elite Broker Ranking Women in Finance edition with the top 25 female brokers in Australia, according to the ranking. And some amazing figures. Something like there were, of the 25 women in the ranking, there was $3.9 billion in loans written over FY25 just between them.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, they have an average settlement of 222 loans a year.
Wow.
And an average total volume of 157 million. So obviously this includes some commercial in there. That would be extremely high.
Yeah, for
157 mil per person. It's
but
kind of high. But yeah, so I think topping this year, the ranking this year was Katie Thomas from Focus Finance. She was the person who actually topped the overall Elite Broker ranking. And then coming second was a commercial broker, Isabella Constantinou from Simplicity Loans and Advisory, a well-known broker in this space. She settled over $314 million last financial year. Well done to her.
Massive props. Congratulations.
But, and that was only across 40 loans. So you can see how the commercial lending landscape's totally different.
Very much so.
Larger dollar size for fewer loans, but obviously they take a bit longer to go through. And then rounding out the top three was Desley Taylor from Mortgage Choice in Ormeau. Again, a really popular and well-known broker. She's done amazing things. She actually settled the most loans in the top 10. She settled 655 mortgages over FY25, totaling over $309 million.
Wow.
Wow.
That loan figure is pretty unbelievable.
655, that's more than 2 a day.
Yeah. Yeah, when you break it down, it becomes even more astonishing.
So she must have a super duper support team behind her to plow through all those.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so massive congratulations to all the women in the top 25 ranking. You can find that news story if you want to find out if you made it into the ranking in the March edition of The Advisor and of course on theadvisor.com.au. And if you are celebrating International Women's Day this Sunday, let us know what you're up to. I know there's a few industry events on today. I think AFG have their Women on the Move event here in Sydney. I have actually been invited to a couple of other events today, but unfortunately couldn't make it. But yeah, we'd love to see your photos. So send them in.
For sure.
And if you do want to find out more about what it takes to run a business as a woman in finance, then do make sure you also sign up to our Women in Finance Luncheon, which is coming up on the 1st of May here in Sydney. We've got Lucy Bloom speaking. She's an amazing speaker. I love her so much. And she'll be delivering a speech at the Women in Finance Lunch. It's a 3-course lunch. You get to talk to people from across the financial services industry about how they're running their businesses. Nice. It's a beautiful day. Nice. Hopefully the sun comes out for us because we're right next to the Opera House and the Sydney what's it called?
Harbour Bridge.
The Harbour Bridge, thank you.
Yeah, on the harbour. How good.
I've only lived here for 10 years. Still can't remember what it's called. It's like,
ideal.
Coat hanger. We're right next to that. So if it is a nice day, we hope we can have a cocktail on the bridge. So if you are interested in that Women in Finance luncheon on the 1st of May, go check it out. Buy some tickets now because it will book up. And similarly, we hope to see everyone next week at Better Business in Queensland.
It's almost upon us. So if you last minute rush, I'm also a singer, so in a semi-profession of mine. So I know how those last-minute rushes work. A lot of people, sit on their hands and wait for the time to come around. So if you are one of those people, get around because it will book out.
Well, now, unfortunately, you're not going to be singing at this one because you're having to stay here and do the news while the rest of the team are kind of on the road for Better Business.
That's all right. Someone has to man the fort.
Man the fort. So if you've got any news for Charlie, then do feel free to email it in.
Please reach out.
Charlie
Tchetchenian.
You're going to have to spell that.
Tchetchenian @momentummedia.com.au.
There you go. Or you can just email in editor@theadvisor.com.au and I'll forward it over to Charlie. But yeah, if you do have any news for us over the next week, do let us know. Reach out.
Yep.
Tell us what you're up to. Tell us what your challenges are. Tell us what you're seeing, what you think we should be looking into as well.
We'd love to hear it and love to report on it.
Yeah. Charlie, have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Anything special planned?
Yeah, funny you should say that. I've got a big show coming up at Canterbury Leagues on Saturday night.
Oh, exciting.
Las Vegas Nights show. So Elvis, Sinatra, Dean Martin,
wow,
all those guys. So I'm looking forward to that. I get to play with exceptional musicians. I've got a 5-piece band backing me and we're going to have a lot of fun. I got an old friend of mine who's going to join me for some duets as well. So I'm really looking forward to it. And just having a sing and interacting with the audience should be a lot of fun.
Exciting. Well, we'll have to potentially get you in one of our events to show off to all of our listeners what you sound like.
Yeah, hidden talent.
Well, enjoy and good luck with
you.
that. Yeah, I don't have any major plans this weekend apart from I'm going to go see Pulp tomorrow, the British band.
Yeah.
And they're playing at the Opera House. So
nice.
That'll be exciting.
Always a good gig at the Opera House.
Yeah,
I wouldn't know, but
It's on the forecourt as well, so I hope it doesn't rain in our heads.
Oh, is it outside?
It's outside, yeah.
Nice.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, but looking forward to that. But anyway, and then we'll be on the road for Better Business. So we hope everyone has a great weekend. If you're celebrating International Women's Day, then happy IWG 2026. And we'll catch you next time for another episode on the Advisor Podcast Network.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.